All right, babies. How are we? Whoever's watching this video, I think two videos ago, 3 videos ago, where is it? Shane goat weeds in our garden. It's like 4 videos ago. What I did was I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I ended up explaining fear in terms of weed, fear, doubt, and those negative feelings that kind of like show up anytime we're thinking of something. And I explained them in terms of weeds in our garden. And I love using gardens as a metaphor because I really think like our mind is kind of like is more of what we give our attention to and what we nurture. So I would recommend you go to that video. I think it's literally called "Fear and the Weeds in Our Garden." That's basically what it's called. It's one, two, three, 4 videos before that. So yay, amazing. Uh, so before the reason I was basic maybe inspired to actually use that as a metaphor, not other metaphors that I normally do. I normally use relationships when it comes to people, simply because more people can relate. But anyways, so when it comes to like so before that, I had written my our thoughts compared to trees, and I wanted to specifically separate like the fact that there are different sizes of trees, there are bushes, there are shrubs, there are vines. It's like anything you can plant basically is a thought, and some thoughts require like a vine would require a tree in order to grow properly. It can't grow on its own because like it can't actually reach the sun, and it can't bear fruit at a low stage, all that good stuff. And well, I wanted to specifically just kind of like distinguish between the different kinds of trees as well. Like there are trees that bear fruit, there are trees that just flower, there are weeds. It's like all kinds of shit could grow. And that's practically our mind, right? Like it's anything that you throw at it, anything that you kind of like. And sometimes you're not the one throwing. Sometimes the wind just blows a couple of ideas and you think they're yours and they turn out to be good or they turn out to be horrible. And maybe some bird came and sat on one of your bushes, ate some like fucking, I don't know, like blueberries and like shot some poison ivy or something, right? Like who the fuck knows? But it's good. It was good for me to think about it. But so it brought me back to something that I wrote, and I wrote in my black book. So this black book is a lot of kind of like just the intense shits that are very isolated from what I think. And every once in a while, I get them. Ever since I started doing these videos, it stopped being as intense. But normally, I get them when I'm actually having a conversation with somebody and I isolate a whole lot of the. It's just when we talk a lot to somebody, eventually you find like your words are being more concise, straight to the points. And that's the time where like something clicks in your head, maybe take this mental note or something. But I'm going to show it to you. It says here, start with a garden, but treat it like a forest. And I think this is the perfect video for it because the video before that I was discussing trees. Why? And if I'm not mistaken, it was Seth Guru that I watched him talk about it. A garden is beautiful. It's elegant. It's uh, it's clean. Is it sustainable though? I think that's something that people do not really understand. Sustainability isn't really elegant. It is definitely beautiful. It is majestic. Elegant, not too much. Why is that? Because as beautiful as a garden is, if you leave it for 2, 3 weeks, what are you going to get when you come back? Exactly it. Everything that grows in a garden requires special attention specifically for it, unless you're planting one crop, so it's no longer a garden. A garden is more of an orchard kind of thing where you plant cucumbers here and tomatoes here. Cucumbers have to be watered like twice a day, man. And they have to be watered before the sun goes up and after the sun comes up because they need to be hydrated all the fucking time because 97%, I think, of the cucumber is actually water. Tomatoes are the same. Like, these are the things that you plant in a garden. You don't plant tomatoes in the forest. I don't know if they last, but there's a high chance the minute a tomato is ripe, something's going to eat it. So it needs to be in a controlled environment. But if you leave a garden long enough, what's going to happen? You guessed it. It's going to turn into a forest. So there's a theory in farming, it's called agroforestry or food forests, basically. And effectively, what they do is they kind of like they check the dynamic of the forest, which is normally the ratios, right? Like if you have like every 5 trees, if you clip two of them, and instead of these 2 trees, you kind of plant like 3 oranges each, you still get the longer trees that protect the forest and keep life for everything. But it also kind of like allows for different kinds of like trees to be growing more useful to us and to life and fruits and all kinds of stuff. So the jungles of Africa would have random cocoa trees and then would have random like papaya trees in random places because the birds will eat them and like would poop them in different places. There are a lot of like different fruits that were just like fucking gorgeous, man. Just like I remember some of them were just beyond majestic. And just like not really bizarre, but like just randomly you see them there. And a big part of what I wanted to do when I was there was I wanted to kind of like get a piece of land and see if I can cultivate smaller areas and keep the forest, just like kind of plant more of these trees around instead of the ones that don't really give us fruit, the sour stuff and stuff like this. And so if you're going to imagine your mind and all the thoughts that are in it, you could very much tend to them like a garden. But then what happens is every single day, your active effort is literally to maintain your thoughts. And in all honesty, man, I really don't think that's sustainable at all, especially if we're planning to actually live life. If every day you plan on going into the garden and tending for your thoughts, then effectively all you are is a garden. If every day you can't live a life where you, for example, if you have a house and if you live a life that's very messy, so you're either messy in a messy individual alone, or you're either a person that's just very much into cleaning the house because you want the house to be clean. You have to like give give in, be less messy, so you don't have to clean as much, not as often as much. And here are the things that you kind of have to consider as well when it comes to just like looking at the things that are happening in your mind. And for me, I think at one point a year ago, when everything was really a mess, the first thing I started doing was I started pruning. And the concept behind it is if I have a piece of land that has everything is growing in it and everything is running wild, what are the things I want to keep in it and what are the things I don't want to keep in it first? And so tending to your forest as a garden is very much a necessary. But also any new thought you introduce to your mind has to be treated from a garden's has to be inserted as if you're planting in a garden. Because you have to be careful what it is you're choosing, you have to be careful where you're placing it, and you have to do all this stuff. But you have to treat it as if it's going to be able to grow on its own. Because if it's something that's consistently demanding your attention, and again, like if it's demanding consistently your attention is not a bad thing, but it has to be big enough for you to kind of like give it enough attention and it to actually produce something big enough. Some thoughts produce fruit. It's perfectly fine. 2, 3 years down the line, any tree can start giving fruit. That's amazing. But some thoughts don't produce fruit. They grow and they grow and they grow and they grow. But because of them, everything else around them becomes safe. All the other trees that are growing around them become safe, secure, the soil wouldn't move, nothing would touch them, right? And if we start looking at our thoughts as if we're planting a garden, but we're treating the garden as a forest, what effectively we're doing is we're kind of like building our thoughts to be strong enough and mature enough to handle themselves. And on top of all of that, to handle other thoughts around them. Because once you're able to find that unique harmony, I guess, that everyone kind of like seeks within oneself, like everyone is trying to get to that sweet spot where they're able to engage with the world, where they're able to just interact in a more. It is harmony, man. It really is. It's just when you wake up and you flow through the day. and all the feelings are there. They're just not really shaking you. You know that horn that comes from a car when you're crossing the road, the angry person that's yelling at somebody on the phone, all these like smaller things would kind of like stop really bothering you, but they'll still be there. And I think that's what harmony is, just like being in tune with yourself. And I used my imagination to basically imagine myself tending to my forest and allowing it to kind of like bring in what it brings in as long as it brings it through me. And I tend to it until it matures enough to be on its own. And you start realizing your mind is full of all kinds of thoughts that show up anytime you're kind of like, anytime they're needed. And different angles give different views and different perspectives, and all of them kind of like together. I don't know, maybe it's just 270 fucking videos of this that's making me feel this way, but like, why the fuck not? It's a video. Today's been cute. I don't know what's going on, but I'm having fun. All right, guys. I love talking about trees, dude. I love talking about trees. All right, babies. Later.